I am told often that I am the exception. My name is Gianna Alva Bodden Esteban. The label that I most identify with would be pansexual. I found that the gender identity archetype isn't something that's particularly useful or that I relate to in any meaningful way regarding myself. I don't care in general about genders or, I guess, plumbing or particular physical makeup of people. I'm open to the whole package of people and how they present. And that's usually what attracts me. So that I don't have any restrictions around somebody's physical configuration or identity, as long as they inspire me in certain ways. And if they inspire me to connect to them in a certain way, I'm open to that. And I don't feel the need to be restricted by certain parameters or, I guess, labels that people have. I can respect those labels, but it's not something that really matters to me when it comes to how I engage with someone. So I come from my maternal side. I come from a very traditional Christian West Indian family. They had a lot of ideas about truth and what truth meant. And fairly early on, like when I was a teenager, I started questioning religion and realizing that it was pretty extensive and insidious and rather toxic concept that was kind of foisted on me. And so I rejected a lot of that kind of going forward, and that was difficult for them. And also difficult for me because you don't want to hurt people who love you but don't realize they've been lying to you this whole time. And then probably in my mid-20s, I ended up having an intimate relationship with my best friend of 8 years for the first time. So that was also a new thing for them to get used to. They had a lot of ideas around, you need to do things as their religion dictated. Women were supposed to be, at least on the face of things, subservient. I think one of the things that really gave me a lot of identity and a lot of will was that I found that the women in my family would say one thing and do the other in a very good way. So they would say that, the man is supposed to be the head of the house, but their actions were that they were the ones who made the decisions. They were the ones who were the breadwinners, and the ones who made the rules. And when it came down to any particular decision, they would always have the final say, even if they never admitted to doing so. So I was brought up around a lot of women who, I kind of describe it in that it's like being raised by a bunch of Liliths who were told they were supposed to be Eves. And it was very weird, and I found that throughout my entire life, so many things I was told didn't add up. And I had a critical eye fairly early on. I noticed that the idea of romance didn't add up because I had a lot of, female and male friends, and they acted completely different around their partners. And it was expected that you wouldn't share all of yourself with somebody in a romantic sense other than your pretty self, and then who you really are was saved for your friends. There's a lot of ideas around, religion, and I started researching and reading scriptures and books like I was told. Whenever I had questions, they said, do your own research. And the more research I did, the more I realized it was really toxic and really pretty archaic and not very useful information. You're told from the onset that you are not good enough, that you are broken, you are sinful, you are ugly, and you need something else outside of you to make you better. And that sets you up for a mindset throughout your entire life that everything else outside of you is going to make you better, or something outside of you is going to cleanse you. It's going to heal you. It's going to make you worth loving, because you on your own, as you are not worth being loved. And it sets the tone for your entire life that you need to have money, you need to have a partner, you need to have a status, you need to fit a certain mold, you need to be something other than what you truly are. You need to fit this archetype, or you're not worth caring about. You have nothing to offer. Intrinsically, you are worthless unless something else makes you worthy. And it sets the tone to continuously chase things and chase ideas and of who you should be, and to abandon yourself. And I find that people, and I've done it myself, build these prisons. And I notice the prisons that I put myself in are built on lies that weren't told just today. They were told throughout my entire life, and they were built from when I was a child. And every time I chose to believe an idea of what I should be rather than who I really was, that was one lie, and on top of that was built another and another, until this prison was created and maintained through all these ideas of what I should be rather than who I was. And it's taken years, and it will continue to take many years to break down those prisons, to know who I really am and yet be more aware on a profound level of who I really am. It's funny you ask that. It makes me think about, so the first woman, or the first woman that I was ever intimate with was my best friend of 8 years. And I remember, I say that it took me 3 hours to go through what normally takes people years to go through. Like, I had all those emotions in like 3 hours one night by myself in my room. And I remember thinking about how much my family was going to struggle, especially my grandmother, and how disappointed and angry and hurt she was going to be. And I remember all the terrible things she told me about how she felt about people who were gay. And I knew that I held a very special place in her heart, and that jokingly a lot of my family would always say I was her favorite. And so I knew how much that was going to hurt her. And I thought about my best friend and how she's identified as gay for the whole time and before I knew her, for those like 8 years and more, and how much self-loathing had been injected to her by the same community I grew up, by people like my grandparents who told her that she was broken, and how much she struggled every day with being enough, and how that really damaged the way she saw herself. And I thought, I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to be a part of it. And if it took, I remember thinking that I'd hope that whatever anger or lashing out or disappointment or whatever consequence she had to force upon me, I hope that would be enough to help my grandmother heal and get over it, because my choice had been made. And if it took her calling me names or being angry with me, I hope the action of going through those things would be enough to console her, because I was not going to abandon my friend. And eventually, from there, after that didn't work out the way ideally, because that in itself wasn't necessarily a very healthy relationship, I learned that I was just as important, and that I deserved to be able to be who I was and love who I loved, and that I deserved the same sort of commitment to myself that I was willing to commit to my friend. And I deserved to stand up for myself and take care of myself. And regardless of what other people may do to hurt themselves based off of my decisions, and how they may lash out and be angry and create strife within themselves because of what I'm doing in my life, that's their decision, and that's a choice they came to, not that day, but based off of many choices they made to lead themselves to that point that they would have to create so much chaos and strife and hatred to attempt to cope with the situation, even though they're really not. that's where they built their sense of self from, and that was their choice to bring themselves there. If people aren't coping with the choices that I'm making and they're making that about them, there are many choices they made that put them there. I didn't put them there. And I can be compassionate, but it doesn't mean that I'm obligated to make it easier for them, even if I can be understanding. And I'm not obligated to apologize for loving or being without boundaries, or at least outside the boundaries that they're comfortable with. I'm honest enough to admit that I'm a liar, smart enough to know that I'm an idiot, and brave enough to admit that I'm a coward. And for me, it's about sitting in the truth of those things and working from there, rather than spending all of my energy trying to run from those realities. Trying to run from pain, or loneliness, or even, the idea of one day dying and not being here. Rather than having fear drive me, I'm looking to befriend and have honest conversations with myself about what I have to work with and what I can build from there. And realize that even with all those things, I am beautiful. I am essentially the master, the creator, the God of my existence. And what world I choose to create within myself and how I choose to relate to myself, appreciate and cherish myself, will set the tone for the experience I have. Period. I feel sad a lot of times that people feel like who they're supposed to be is more important and more valuable and more lovable than who they are. To anybody who's struggling with the idea that they should be something other than who they really are, I would say that I'd want to say to them, you matter. It's not how others react to you that defines your value. It's how well you can take care of yourself in the aftermath of being yourself that matters.